Hey everyone, welcome to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. On this episode, we are going to sit down with the food babe, Vani Hari, and she is going to share practical tips on how to make healthier choices, understand food labels, and navigate the confusing world of ingredients, and so much more. Get ready to have your mind blown. I am so excited for today's episode and thank you for joining me. I just had the pleasure of interviewing the incredible Vani Hari, also known as the Food Babe. You've probably seen a bunch of her posts on Instagram. And on today's episode, we are going to sit down and learn all about her story, and we're going to dive into a really important topic of understanding food labels and processed foods and why they are so toxic here in the US. So Vani is a revolutionary food activist, a New York Times bestselling author, and co-founder of the organic food brand True Vani, and was named one of the most influential people on the internet by Time magazine, and there's a really good reason why. She started foodbabe.com to spread information about what is really in our American food supply. She teaches people how to make the right purchasing decisions at the grocery store, how to live an organic lifestyle, and how to travel healthfully around the world. And you definitely will want to check out her blog or her website, foodbabe.com. But you guys have probably seen some of her posts circulating on Instagram. So a lot of these posts are going to show the ingredients of a food here in the US, and then they're going to show that same food over in the UK with a very different ingredient list. And usually the one in the US is filled with artificial flavors and colors and dyes and additives, while the ones in Europe are made without those ingredients, with ingredients that we know. And it was a lot of this that she was seeing that encouraged her to do something about this, because you go over to Europe and a lot of people say that they can tolerate the food so much better over there, but not here. And so her friends and family encouraged her to start this blog in 2011, and it quickly became this massive vehicle for change. And she has actually led campaigns against food giants like Kraft and Starbucks and Chick-fil-A and Subway and General Mills that actually got her over 500,000 signatures, and it led to the removal of a lot of controversial ingredients used by these companies, which is just amazing. Imagine, one person taking on these giant food giants, and this work is so inspiring to me, and I'm so thankful for the changes that she has helped make in our American food landscape. And so through her corporate activism, petitions, and social media campaigns, she and her Food Babe army have become one of the most powerful populist forces in health, food, and food industries, which is just amazing. It gives me chills. And Vani is on a mission to transform the way we think about food, create a healthier future for everybody. And if you want to be part of this movement, you can join her email newsletter on her website to stay informed about her latest initiatives and campaigns. And together we can make this difference. We can totally change lives. We can make a change, and it's starting at those grassroots. She has a new cookbook coming out called Food Babe Family, and it will hit stores on October 17th, 2023. And I'm truly, like I said, grateful for Vani for coming on the show today, sharing her wisdom, and super thankful for all that she's done and all that she will do in the future to support big changes. Before we jump into the interview, I just wanted to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Good Idea, which is one of my favorite tools for helping to stabilize your blood sugar and reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes up to 20 to 30%, which is super important. We know that when you get those spikes, it leads to those crashes, it leads to inflammation, it leads to cravings and hunger and energy crashes. So it is really helpful to stabilize your blood sugar, not spike so high. And Good Idea is just a sparkling water that helps you do that. It has a blend of amino acids and electrolytes and chromium that helps to reduce blood sugar spikes by 20 to 30% after meals. So head to goodidea.us and you can use the code Danny Health, DANIHEALTH, to get 10% off your order. All right, let's dive into the interview with Vani. Hey, Vani, welcome to the Unlock the Sugar Shackles podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle.
Yeah, so I have been following your work since, maybe when I started this 2012, my own food journey. And I know you've been doing things for a long time in the space. You've taken on giant food giants like Kraft and Starbucks and Chick-fil-A and Chipotle and all these incredible, you've done so much in this world. And I'd love to hear your story and how you started to get into this world, what made you passionate about it, and we'll start there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I grew up as an immigrant Indian child. Both my parents had an arranged marriage in India, came here to live in the 1960s. And when my dad brought my mom over, he was really about the American dream and just wanted himself and my mom and our family to really fit in. And so my mom had never had a McDonald's hamburger before coming here shortly after getting married, and that was the first thing my dad introduced her to. And he was like, if we're going to be in America, we're going to eat like Americans. And that's kind of how I was raised. So, my parents loved to buy fast food because it was super cheap, it was readily available, it was fast. And my mom continued to make like her homemade Indian food growing up, but because it looked so different than what everything I was used to in terms of seeing at school or seeing at my friend's house, I shunned it, and my brother shunned it too. And just a younger sibling looking up to her brother, I just was like, oh, if he doesn't like it, it can't be good. And so we just had really poor eating habits as children. And back then my parents were so busy working. My mom was a teacher, my dad was an engineer, also teacher, and they spent so much time raising us and being with us and being great parents, but they never really looked at our nutrition. And it's because they just didn't know. They grew up in India where everything was made from scratch, made with medicinal spices. They shared a cow in a village where that cow was, giving raw milk, it wasn't pasteurized to death. They ate meat, if any, as a condiment. Back then, actually, my mom never ate meat. I think my dad, because he lived in northern India, had a little bit more exposure to meat. But, it was something that, they were not expecting when they came to the United States in terms of how processed the food was. But because my mom didn't know how to cook American food, like, at Thanksgiving dinner, for example, she relied on the grocery store to help her. So everything from stovetop stuffing to, cranberry sauce in a can, all of that stuff we were consuming, year after year. And even like a regular birthday cake, she did not, at that point, really know how to make it. So she would, rely on Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines, and I remember eating the frozen Pepperidge Farm chocolate cake with vanilla cake or chocolate icing and with vanilla cake in the middle for every birthday that we would take out of the freezer and we thawed out and we would eat that. And did I lose you?
Yeah. Oh, I think we're back. I can hear you now.
Okay, great. And so basically I ate this lifestyle for most of my life. And then in my 20s, I hit rock bottom. I was working at a Big Six consulting firm, traveling on the road. It was my first job out of college. And I was, again, outsourcing my food to other people in terms of, everyone who wanted us to work many, many hours at our job would, cater in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I would just eat whatever's available. I wouldn't make food for myself or make choices for myself. It would be like the blueberry muffins and the bagels in the morning, the big spread of barbecue at lunch, or the big Italian dinner in the evening. And of course, at the end of every buffet line, there's dessert and all sorts of things. And then, if we had to work late, there was donuts. And so it was just something that, again, I found myself in this position where I was eating a lot of processed foods. And I ended up with appendicitis in the hospital, and that was my wake-up call. And I was reading a little bit on your website, Danielle, about your wake-up call. And you were sick of being tired, right? I mean, you were tired of being sick, right?
Yeah, sick and tired of being sick and tired. However you want to say it, exactly.
That's exactly right. And that's how I was too.
Yeah.
So I basically decided that I'm done with this. I'm going to put myself first above my job. And I started working out during lunch. I started bringing in my lunch and breakfast and started to make myself a priority. And I became like sort of like the health nut in my job. And everyone's like, wow, she takes herself really seriously in terms of her health and her habits, right? There's always that one person at your job that you notice that, you know, they always have the gym bag or they always have their food that they're carrying with themselves. And I became that person. And I started to just teach myself about nutrition, and I made a lot of wrong turns. I went down the Weight Watchers route. I went down the calorie counting route. I went down the low fat, route. Like every single turn and anything that like a Shape magazine, not to pick on Shape magazine, but like any of those women's magazines was telling me to do, I was like, okay, I'll do that, right? And it wasn't until I actually started reading about true nutrition and checking out books from the library on nutrition that I actually understood what I was doing to my body on all of these different diets. I found a common theme actually within all of these diets is that they didn't put ingredients first. They actually put these, calculations of fat grams or calories or protein grams ahead of everything else, but they weren't actually looking at where the food started. And whether it was Weight Watchers telling me that I could eat a piece of licorice because it was only 1 point, or, another diet telling me, oh, I can eat Oreos because they're low fat, I saw like an overarching theme of all the things that were wrong with the way that I was trying to get healthy. And I came across this book and it was just groundbreaking for me. And this book was called Conscious Eating. And in this book, they had this concept that the majority of foods in the grocery store shelves are dead. And I was like, dead? That's exactly how I felt for most of my life. Like a zombie walking through life, not clear-headed, not really understanding what I'm capable of doing in this world. Because I can tell you right now, there's no way I would have been able to take on the food giants and getting them to change their ingredients and doing this work had I not been feeling great about myself and feeling really good and healthy and happy. Because I really don't think anybody becomes who they're supposed to be in life until their body gets healthy. Like, I really do believe that. Like, I think like certain people that are in this rat race environment and they're going crazy and they're doing well and they may be successful on paper or on the outside, they could be so much more successful had they just take care of themselves, right? Even the people that you see out there that look successful, I just feel like we are all leaving our potential behind when we don't put ourselves first and our health first, because wow, look at what I've been able to do and in such a short period of time, and with a career that I never thought would be my career, right? I thought I was going to be a consultant for the rest of my life working at banks. I had no idea I'd become a food activist, write 4 books, and start a supplement company that is disrupting the entire supplement space and protein. If you guys don't know about Vani, I started Vani a few years ago. It's been 5 years now. And I started it because I really wanted to create products I wish to see in the world, because every time I would go buy a supplement, it would have crazy ingredients in it, natural flavors, gargum, all these things that I've learned that disrupt your gut bacteria or make you feel bloated. And I wanted to eliminate all of that from the supplements that I was taking. And I mean, even one of the protein powders I was taking was recalled because it had like rat droppings in it. I mean, I came across so many awful situations, and I was like, I have to reinvent this, right? I have to make it better, and I have to make it the least amount of ingredients possible, and all the unnecessary stuff that actually improves the bottom line of the food industry, I'm going to remove. And yeah, we're not going to make as much money or whatever. It's fine as long as we're creating the best product. for my body and for my family's body.
I love that. And I love your idea of ingredients first. And I personally got into the health world by finding Rob Wolf's book called The Paleo Diet Solution. And when I read about paleo, it was sort of a very similar awakening that I was like, oh my goodness, I grew up on processed foods. I mean, I remember in Spanish class when they would be like, what's your favorite food? I'm like, Eggo waffles. How do you say that in Spanish? Or like Dannon yogurt. Everything was a name brand. So it was like I didn't understand that food was these single ingredient things until I read Rob Wolf's book, and it really dawned on me, oh my goodness, I grew up on processed foods, and I think that's why I'm so sick. And I gave it a try, like what he was talking about, and it really made sense to me to eat real food. However, we live in a modern world, and we're not going to eat fully 100% whole, unprocessed foods. We also want to find some things that make things a little easier, like a jar of sauce, right? Like I don't have time to, sit and make sauce all day on Sunday. So there's these other foods that maybe I've called them sort of like minimally processed foods, where it's like I could make them at home. I could make the nut butter at home. I could make the sauce at home, right? I could make this dressing at home, but these are time savers, right? So yeah. I think these are a lot of the foods, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the things that you're working on making better. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, everything from, one of the things that has really been alarming to me in my journey is every time you eat out, you're being exposed to so many chemicals, whether it's the pans that they're using. They're probably using Teflon pans. They're probably using kind of plastic packaging, some other film or wrapping that touches your hot food and then leaches into your hot food. I mean, the fast food wrappers. You're being exposed to the actual oils that they're using to cook your food in because of the situation we're in terms of our government subsidizing corn and soy. That's the majority of oils that are being used in restaurants because it's super cheap. And unfortunately, those oils are huge inflammation creators in our bodies. It turns on cancer cells. And the way that they're produced is horrendous. They're not natural. By the time you consume a corn or a soy oil, it's been deodorized, it's been bleached, it's been put through so many different chemical processes. It's been extracted with hexane, a carcinogenic substance that the FDA doesn't even regulate in our food. So not to mention that sometimes, it leaves little traces of trans fatty acids in your body, which create heart disease. So there's all sorts of problems with these oils. And every time we eat out, this becomes an issue. So for me, I always thought like there's got to be like healthier, places to eat out. And so, one of the places that I thought was healthy was Chipotle. And, they had this tagline, food with integrity. And I wanted to know, was it really food with integrity? And when I called to ask for the ingredients, they wouldn't give it to me. And I was like, well, what do you mean you won't give me the ingredients in your food? And they wouldn't do it. And so then I was like, well, I'm just going to go convince one of my local, I went to different local Chipotles and eventually convinced one of the managers to show me the back of the package. And I took pictures of what was in the food. And there was everything from additives to all of these inflammatory oils to GMOs, things that they were hiding and they weren't being upfront about. And I said, you cannot have this tagline, food with integrity, and not tell us what's in your food and then hide all of this stuff. And I started to write about it. It went viral. And the head of marketing at Chipotle called me and said, Vani, and I think he's still the head of marketing, Chris Arnold. Anyways, I think he still is there. Or maybe he's left by now. I have to look him up. But he's a nice guy. He called me. He's like, Vani, back off. We got this. We're going to take GMOs out and we're going to post the ingredients. But we're not going to post the ingredients until we take the GMOs out. But we're going to do it. And it was such a huge win of awareness, but also just a monumental thing that a fast food chain would do as a result of just literally me discovering this and sharing it, and then amazing people who care about their health and want people to know more about their food shared this information, and we were able to make that change. And it was just so incredible to see that happen. But this is, but this is across the board, like every time you go out to eat. So for me, the only way to really take control of your health is to take control of your food, and that means cooking at home. And that's why I've been busy writing cookbooks. My last cookbook, Food Babe Kitchen, came out in 2020. And now my second cookbook is coming out very soon. It's Food Babe Family, and it has 100 recipes, and it tells you exactly how my family eats. It's an inside look and an intimate look into how I eat and how, we make it work as a family, where I'm making the same meal for my daughter, my son, myself, and my husband. I'm not cooking specific things for them unless they're sick or something's, abnormal, right? Which is actually happening in my house right now. So, we have the stomach bug going through our house right now, which has been brutal. It's been 2 weeks of brutalness over here, and I'm the last woman standing. I'm fine, thankfully. I don't know how it happens. I think moms have like immunity of steel. Thank goodness someone is available to take care of everybody. But, I made my daughter, for example, a lot of times, you hear stomach bug and people are like Jell-O, Gatorade, all of this stuff that's super processed, full of artificial food dyes. That's not going to help a sick person get better. What is going to help someone get better, and let's just break down what Gatorade and Jell-O are. Like Jell-O is, the reason why they say Jell-O is because it has gelatin in it and actually helps coat the digestive system. So that's why it's like easy on the digestive system to eat it, but you don't want all the other additives and sugar and other things that come with it. So instead, you can have bone broth. And so I made my daughter rice with bone broth instead of water. And so it absorbed all that bone broth. There's nice protein from the bone broth. It has all of that gelatin and those amazing collagen in there to help coat the gut, to get it back into regulation state. And, I paired that because it's so savory and delicious with like a chicken bone broth. I paired that with, some avocado, which avocado is a great fat source. It acts like a banana in terms of the potassium that you need. When you think about when you have the stomach bug, the brat diet, bananas, toast, applesauce, and rice. Well, you can take that to another level and just continue to add nutrition. And so, yeah, I could give her saltines, right? But there's like zero nutrition in a saltine, right? But I give her the bone broth rice with avocado, and that's what's gonna heal her. And so this is how I take control of my health, and I take control of my family's health, and I actually teach all of that in Food Babe Family.
That's awesome. I love talking about the restaurants, the vegetable oils, how it's, literally from the pans to everything that you are exposed to at home. It's so much. I always say that the number one investment you can make in your health is learning how to cook from home, and then finding a way to do it that works for your lifestyle, your family. And for me, it's about not being in the kitchen all day long, right? Because we're busy, and I'm sure there's lots of really great doable recipes that kids even like. That's amazing in your book. So I know that one of the posts that I remember seeing of yours the most that really stand out to me are the posts where you share how foods in the U.S., let's say Fruit Loops, are totally different ingredients from these same foods in other countries, like in the UK. So can you talk to us about some, like, why that is? Like, how come the food over here is just so horrendous?
Yeah, so, over the last 50 years or so, there's been over 10,000 chemicals invented to put in our food. So it's a very new phenomenon. We're a science experiment in terms of ingesting these chemicals and deciding whether our bodies can handle these things, or are they really related to diseases that we're seeing an increase of. And Europe has taken a different approach in terms of what chemicals they allow in their food. And so a lot of the controversial chemicals, the ones that have specific studies where there is some problem related to that additive, they take a precautionary approach where they decide, you know what, you have to prove it's healthy or we're not going to put it in our food. And so that's been the case with everything from artificial food dyes that are linked to hyperactivity in children, that are linked to allergies, asthma, linked to inflammation in the body, linked to immunity problems. I mean, all sorts of things related to artificial food dyes. In Europe, they have a statement. If a food manufacturer decides to use artificial food dyes, it says, may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children. So they give a warning to people that if you give this to children, it could cause this problem. Now, here in the United States, we don't have that warning. Our parents don't get that information when they buy food for kids. And we, unfortunately, are exposed to artificial food dyes everywhere. The food manufacturers have figured out, well, I don't want to put this warning label on my food when I sell it in Europe, so I'm just going to take it out. I'm going to take out these harmful chemicals. I'm going to make my product safer and healthier for people in Europe because of their regulations, but I'm not going to do it across the board. I'm going to continue to sell Americans the cheaper, chemical-filled, toxic crap. And this policy goes across the board for companies. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Kellogg's, General Mills, they're all guilty. Kraft, everybody's guilty of this, okay? And it's because they can get away with it here in the United States because our government is asleep at the wheel and they don't regulate food chemicals like they do in Europe. And so, unfortunately, unless the FDA gets sued and they win, these consumer groups and other proactive nonprofits and other people sue the FDA to get some of these additives removed, then these additives just continue to proliferate our food supply. And so one of the most absolutely horrendous examples of this is Kellogg's cereals. We've got Fruit Loops. We've got all sorts of their cereals that have artificial food dyes here in the United States, but overseas they do not have them. And on top of it, they decided after one of my campaigns in 2015 that they were going to remove artificial food dyes, and they made headlines. Like every single news outlet talked about this and gave them press and gave them praise on making this decision, but then they never did it. Instead, they started coming out with new cereals like Baby Shark and Unicorn and all of these like Elf on the Shelf and to get kids hooked to their cereals that is like more current. And they're still using artificial food dyes. They haven't made the changes. And the worst part about it is they don't even have to create a new recipe. They already know the recipe. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They literally just have to sell us the same stuff they sell in Europe. And they won't do it because of money. Wow. And, I've been on their case for quite a while. I haven't done the no-hold-barred approach yet. I'm thinking about doing it soon because I'm so fed up and so frustrated that they continue to do this. And, with Kraft, I had to march to their headquarters and deliver petitions. With Subway, I had to, I was like on every single, news station talking about it for them to change.
What did you talk about Subway?
Oh, goodness. So, yeah, we could get into that. But so Subway was also guilty of the same hypocrisy and unethical policy. Mm-hmm. They were serving us bread here in the United States, under their tagline, Eat Fresh. They were serving their bread with azodicarbonamide, which was this chemical that you use in shoe rubber and yoga mats. And they don't use it in any...
That's what it smells like. That you walk past a Subway and it just makes me gag.
well, they don't use it anymore, but wow. Because of our campaign. But it's I found out that they weren't using it in Europe, that they don't use it at all in Singapore, because if you do use this chemical in your food, you get fined $450,000 and get put in jail. I mean, this is crazy. This is like a really strong chemical, right? And if you look at like the side of a yoga mat, you see like evenly dispersed air bubbles. Well, it's the same thing in bread they wanted to happen, right? It evenly dispersed the air bubbles so that when they were baking their bread, it was uniform. It was the same thing that you knew to expect every single time. And that's how fast food is created, really, because you want to remember, okay, that's a McDonald's hamburger. Okay, that's a Subway sandwich. Okay, that's a Wendy's sandwich. They're creating flavors and a processed food that you always remember and is always consistent and always the same. But when you bake bread from home, from scratch, it's never the same, right? You cut it open, there's a big hole in it, da 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 da. Like, it tastes different every single time. I don't even remember what the last bread I made, what it tastes like, but I can tell you what a Subway bread tastes like. I can tell you what a McDonald's hamburger tastes like, because it's imprinted in your brain. They combine that with other chemicals, natural flavors, MSG, yeast extract, to create those flavors in your brain, to hijack your taste buds and your brain signals so that you continue to crave that flavor and eat more than you should. So this is another reason why I avoid fast food or any kind of food that's processed, because it's manufactured to create cravings. Unless it's a clean organic product, you can understand all the ingredients on the back of the package. You know what those ingredients are. They're not adding natural flavors in it. A lot of times you can stop after eating a couple, right? You can just stop. Like, I eat these plantain chips that are delicious. They're made with coconut oil. I eat a few of those, I'm good. If you were to give me a bag of Doritos, I wouldn't be able to stop, right? And so that's the difference, is in Doritos, they're using MSG, natural flavors, other things in there, to create that irresistibility. And when you're eating natural foods, you're not getting that signal in your brain. And so for me, I've decided that for my health, I don't want to be controlled by this manufactured food system. I want to be as close to nature as possible. I want to eat as many whole, real fruits and vegetables as possible. And I want to have my meats raised the way they're supposed to be raised, like in a healthy, happy farm, not being fed GMO corn and soy. I want to have my butter being from grass-fed cows. I want my yogurt from grass-fed cows, or even coconuts. I love coconut yogurt. That's how I want to eat. I love goat cheese. I have all these different kinds of goat cheese that I buy, and I love it. It's easier on the belly. It's very digestible. It's so good. I make them in my quesadillas. I put it on my pizza. I do everything with it. And my kids love it. And that's just how I eat. And I'm telling you, I haven't had to diet. Even postpartum, after 2 babies, I have not had to diet and actually remove foods from my diet, other than for health reasons, like certain things I had to do a couple things because I had some inflammation, but for weight control, I've never had to diet since having this lifestyle. And my blood sugar has been awesome and amazing. And, it's really interesting talking to you, because there's this new resurgence of a lot of emphasis on blood sugar because of these continuous glucose monitors that you put on your arm. And I would love to hear your feedback on, when you're eating real food versus processed foods, what you see.
Yeah. So when you eat a processed food with the same number of grams of carbohydrates as a non-processed food, so let's say we take apple juice and we have the same amount of carbohydrates in a regular apple, and you compare both of those, the juice from the apple will spike you more. And that's a simple thing about the processing, because they take out the fiber, and the fiber slows down the absorption of the glucose. But if you do that with other types of processed foods, so like potato chips versus potatoes, you will always see that the processed foods will spike you more than the whole foods. And not to mention, of course, they're addicted, like really, really addictive, and they make you eat way more than just one serving, right? You can have way more potato chips than you can like whole mashed potatoes, because you get full and you're having these with a meal. So yeah, that's definitely very common to see. And I'm totally with you with the idea that ingredients matter, having whole real foods needs to be the premise of a healthy diet. And when, if I want to have, people are like, do you ever have, any sugar or thing? Yeah, but I'm really mindful of what ingredients I have. Yeah, I might have a plantain chip if I'm, going on vacation, but I'm always reading the back of the food, like always reading these labels. So I'm fully in agreement. We probably have very similar diets because we're, out of the same mold here. So the idea that people need to pick up a food and read the ingredients is step one. However, sometimes people will say, well, I don't know what these things are. And I remember myself, like, being a kid, sitting in front of the cereal box, looking at the ingredients and thinking, oh, they must know what I need. I don't know what this stuff is, but I guess it's fine because they wouldn't sell it to me to hurt me purposefully, right? Like, I guess I need all this stuff. So I think we sometimes override the idea that we know what food is, like organic black pepper, like organic garlic, things that you recognize, things that you have at home. But then there's these questionable ingredients, like what about natural flavors? Is that terrible? So what are some of the ingredients that we should be looking out for that are like particularly bad, and then some of those ones that you wouldn't necessarily suspect, but you definitely want to avoid?
Yeah, so I've talked a lot about natural flavors. I think that's like one of the, it's funny, Sarah Blakely, who is the founder of Spanx, I went to go speak at the headquarters a couple years ago, and she asked me, she's like, what's the one ingredient everybody should avoid? And, it's like, I could talk about a lot of different ingredients. I mean, before trans fats was actually banned in food, that would probably be the number one, right? But where does trans fat start? It starts with corn and soy and cottonseed oil. I mean, cottonseed oil is one of the worst types of oils that you can put in your body. It's what they're using probably to fry every French fry in America right now. I mean, In-N-Out was using cottonseed oil to fry their French fries. I called them out and they stopped using it, which was really cool. But they are one chain out of so many, right? And cottonseed is not even a real crop that we eat, right? I mean, it's cotton, right? We're growing cotton for textiles. So they're actually regulated under an entirely different EPA guideline on what chemicals they can spray on that crop. So cottonseed oil is just a byproduct of the cotton industry, and they figured out, hey, we can fry stuff in this oil. People aren't going to die right away, right? And we can make this a food product. And that is what's entered our food supply. It's absolutely disgusting. It's one of the worst oils to be using, period. They actually use it at my local bakery to fry their donuts, and it's just sad. It's really sad. It's a bakery I grew up on when I was really little. And when I found that out, I was really depressed. So, so that's one of them that I would definitely avoid. The corn, the soy, the canola oil. I would stick to, foods that are made with olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. Chosen Foods makes a great avocado oil. They also make an avocado oil spray, which is so great because, Pam is so dreadful. If you look at the ingredients in Pam, they're just absolutely awful. And a lot of people use that to make their eggs in the morning or whatever. Well, you just need to be using real grass-fed butter. And if you really do have to have a spray, use an avocado oil. You can also buy a spray can and put olive oil in it and spray it yourself with olive oil. So that's another option you can do. Or you can just use coconut oil. I eat all of those oils a lot in my cooking. Mostly butter, though. Grass-fed butter is what I'm giving to my kids. I smother our vegetables in it. I make just about everything with it. I threw a huge stick of it, not a stick of it, but a tablespoon of it in a rice and, anything that I'm making, just to add that healthier fat in there. And you get that really abundant vitamin A, which is so crucial to brain development, in cancer, in cancer prevention and stuff. So I love that. In terms of other ingredients to avoid, I don't like a lot of guar gums, xanthan gums, locust gum, carrageenan, these type of ingredients that are used as emulsifiers in food because they disrupt your gut lining and your bacteria in your gut. And for me, I don't like to feel bloated. I like to feel like nice and lean when I'm wearing something. I don't want to feel like I just ate, 10 pounds of, donuts or whatever, right? I want to feel like good about myself, and that goes with not feeling bloated. And so I avoid those chemicals to not feel that way. And I would say there's a couple others. Monodiglycerides is an ingredient that was invented and has now been put into a lot of foods to replace trans fats that were there before, but they still contain little minute amounts of trans fats. So it's something you definitely want to avoid. But it's a type of preservative that they're adding to food so it doesn't break down on the shelf. I mean, everything that's being added to food that sits on the shelf for longer than 6, 9, 10 months, 12 months, those products are really bad for you in terms of the fact that they have to put these amount of chemicals in them for them to sit on the shelf for so long.
Yeah, it makes you think, how easy is it for my body to break down something that's designed to not break down if it's just sitting out and it's not spoiling for a year, right? So our body probably has a hard time breaking that stuff down too. What about sweeteners? So there was big headlines that aspartame's not good for us. It's like, oh yeah, we knew that. But other sweeteners, where do you stand on some of these, and what information can you share with us?
Yeah, and for me, sweeteners come in the form of real foods. Like if I'm going to sweeten something, I will use a mashed up banana to sweeten muffins, right? I will use dates. I will use prunes. Prunes are an amazing sweetener in cookies. Like if you blend it up and make a paste with it first, you can use it instead of sugar. So I like to use real whole foods. Then I go, when I have to go another level in order to make something taste really rich and amazing, I'll use maple syrup or honey. And those are two sweeteners that I love because they have some nutritional quality to them. They have some vitamins and minerals. It's as close to nature as possible in terms of, the type of processing it goes through. But also I love coconut sugar, which has a lower glycemic index. Now, coconut sugar can be granulated, so it can replace sugar 1-to-1 in baking, which I love. It's a little bit darker, so it makes whatever you're making a little darker, like brown sugar. But it's delicious, and you won't even notice the difference. So I love those. That's my go-to. Now, in terms of really reducing sugar content, the only actual sweetener that I would recommend that doesn't have calories or something like that would be monk fruit, and it depends on the type of monk fruit. So the monk fruit that we use at Vani does not have erythritol in it. It's not cut.
It's hard to find that.
Yeah, it doesn't have erythritol. It's not cut with stevia. It's not cut with anything. It's pure monk fruit. It's very hard to find a monk fruit that doesn't have erythritol, or a company that uses monk fruit that's hiding the fact that they're using erythritol too. So at Vani, we don't use that. I don't use stevia in my products because there has been some studies done on rats, actually male rats, and it has affected their fertility. You can go read that study and determine whether it's something you want to avoid. But to me, there's something wrong with the processing that stevia goes through. Like for example, Truvia, which is one of the brand names of stevia, that was gone through a 40-step patented process to extract stevia from a leaf, and then it goes through so many different things, and then also it's added with other sweeteners and other dextrose and other things that they use as a filler for it, and then they put it in a package. So for me, I have to be the most pure when it comes to that stuff. And when I think about sweets, because I love sweets, I mean, I mentioned donuts. Donuts are I would say a donut or caramel cake, something like that would be my number one, sweet. They're so delicious. Anyways,
that's ice cream for me, so I hear you.
Yeah, when I think about sweets, I use sweets in my diet as a condiment, right? I eat as many whole fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, good meats, cheeses, yogurts, all of that in my diet. And then at the end of the day, if I'm still hungry and I have room for it, and I always do have room for it, I will eat a sweet. And I'll just make sure that it's a healthier sweet. And sometimes it may not be, But because 95% of my diet is so clean, I'm okay, indulging in that 5%. We all have our vices, so.
Yeah, and I mean that's when I have a program, Blood Sugar Mastery. I always tell people the end goal is not to be in ketosis and never having carbs. It's to have a good relationship with food, to be healthy enough so that we can enjoy what life has to offer, and in a way that's not damaging our health. Like, you have a lot of health reserves. You're not currently, like, I'm going to assume, working on, an autoimmune disease and healing these deep things. So after you achieve this level of healing, the good news is that we can enjoy some of these foods, made with coconut sugar, or something made with like dates or something like that, like a paleo cookie or something along these lines, and it not throw us off. Or, as you mentioned earlier, which is something that I talk about a lot, where it's not controlling you, where it's not like, oh, I have these paleo cookies in the fridge and all I can think about is having them, and maybe I'll just have one more, like where that sugar dragon starts to wake up and control your thoughts. That's a lot how, these processed foods, they wake up your sugar dragon. They're having conversations, like they're controlling things, not you.
And the thing is they will control you because they're meant to control you, a lot of these processed foods. And so you shouldn't feel bad about the fact that they're making you have these sugar dragons. I love that. Yeah. And you shouldn't feel bad about that because this is exactly what they're designed to do. But you can trick your body in order to handle this stuff. And the way you do that is you create habits. And my habit is I don't have dessert or something sweet unless I've had a whole meal, right? Because I don't eat something dessert or sweet by itself, because then that is what leads to overeating and your taste buds and your brain signals being hijacked on overdrive. But if you've already filled your belly with like really good food, and I'm sure you know this from your glucose monitor, when you eat vegetables first, your blood sugar is much more stable than if you were to start with the starch in your food or the meat in your food. If you eat the vegetables first, so if you do dessert, after that meal, it's going to have a less impact in terms of blood sugar. Maybe not, just when we're measuring blood sugar, but if we're measuring your whole entire health, I'm not sure. But it's interesting. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And having dessert is better than having a snack, where you're having these foods by themselves. That's why I don't use the word snack. I say I don't like that word. We call them mini meals. So if you need to eat between meals, have a mini meal. Because when you think about the word snack, you think about snack foods, packaged things. Like, what can I have? What's a healthy snack? I would argue that it's not necessarily healthy to snack for most people. Kids might be a little different, or people who are healing certain things. But if you think about mini meal, it makes you think like, oh, maybe like a hard-boiled egg and some carrots and hummus or something like that, right? Like, you get a meal. And so we're not snacking all day long. That's really important for blood sugar too. So I know we just have a couple of minutes left, and I would love to talk about how I have a lot of listeners who have families and kids. So how can we make this work for kiddos? Like, where do we start with introducing kids to these concepts and things like that?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to learn how to make really yummy vegetables. And, the thing is I'm just thinking about the vegetables that I was exposed to when I was little at school and how awful they tasted. No wonder I didn't eat them, right? But if you roast cauliflower with a little paprika and sea salt and olive oil, and you let that roast for 30 minutes at 375, and you bring it out, it just tastes delicious. It's so good. But if you were to serve a raw piece of cauliflower, or slightly steamed and still hard and crunchy to a child without any butter or salt or anything, they're not going to eat it, right? And so you have to learn how to make vegetables for them to be delicious and tasty. And that's why, again, I started my cookbook series, and my cookbook Food Babe Family is coming out soon. And I hope everyone listening will get a copy because it's amazing. And I put my whole heart and intimate life into it. First of all, just to take the pictures for the book, imagine like 60 family portraits in all different outfits, all within like 3 days. Like, it was just... It was insanity. I don't even know how we got through it, but we did. And then you mix food and recipes in with it. It's just insanity. but I'm really proud of it. And that's the other thing is, in terms of vegetables, I feel like if you get vegetables into kids, getting the other stuff in them is a lot easier, and I always serve vegetables first at my table. And it's just my kids know that we eat in courses, and so when we go out to eat at restaurants, it's like a very natural transition in terms of they know that the appetizer's coming and dinner's coming later, and then dessert, and it's like we have this long family meal. We are sitting there for almost an hour every single meal, at least 45 minutes to an hour. It's not like this 20-minute fast thing. We are all sitting down together. We're doing this. It's a very important lifestyle habit of mine to sit down with my kids and eat with them. And even if I have a babysitter here or a nanny or anybody else in the room, or like they're here, I'm still sitting down with my kid, because it's that important to me to have that connection. There's no phones. We're sitting there talking. Sometimes we read books. If I'm having a smoothie, I'll sometimes read a book to my child during that time because it's just extra reading time. So, but a lot of times we just chit chat about our day and what we're doing, and we talk about the future or where we're traveling to, and we plan things so the kids know what's happening. And it's just an amazing time to be together. The other habit that I think is so important for parents to develop is don't serve the same flour all the time. Like if you're used to making everything with white flour, change it up. Sometimes use almond flour, sometimes use buckwheat flour, sometimes use spelt flour. Kids shouldn't be having the same exact type of flour all the time. And white flour, unfortunately, is just completely nutritionally, devoid of nutrients. I mean, the fact that they have to add nutrients back in after they process it should tell you something. But if you were to switch it up or use half white flour and then you add almond flour or buckwheat flour or spelt flour, or sometimes you use oat flour, you're adding a nice enrichment in terms of what your child's being exposed to, and they're not going to develop that taste of only having that white flour. I think that's been such an amazing thing that I do in my baking, whether I'm making pancakes or waffles. I'm making those things, and yeah, we might have waffles every day for a week, but they're not Eggo waffles made with white flour. They're waffles made with buckwheat one day, or almond flour and sweet potatoes one day. That recipe is actually in my first cookbook, Food Babe Kitchen, my sweet potato waffles. And we're having a large variety of food. And so the third thing that I just want to say is have that large variety of food. Eat the rainbow every single day. We actually, at the end of the day, during dinner time, most days we talk about how many different colors we ate that day. And everybody thinks back to what they ate for breakfast and what fruits they had at breakfast and what vegetables they had at dinner. And we see, who ate the rainbow. And we just try to make sure that we're eating as many varieties of foods as possible. And I don't make the same vegetable for my kid because they like it. Like, of course, my kids, like certain things. Like they like broccoli. They'll eat their broccoli because I cover it in grass-fed butter. They love it. But I don't serve it every day because I know they're going to eat it. I serve different vegetables every single day so that they get a wide range of nutrition and they're exposed to different vegetables. So some days I make purple cabbage. Some days I make cauliflower. Some days I make Brussels sprouts. Some days I do roasted carrots. Some days I do beets. Every single day I'm making something different so that they're exposed to a different fruit or vegetable, so they're not eating the same diet all the time.
Yeah, that's really important and really helpful. And it sounds like in your family that there's probably this culture of trying things, even if it's new to us, if we're not sure. Is that something that you encourage as well? Because in my family, my parents were picky, and they're like, we don't like a lot of stuff. You don't have to try that. And I was the girl eating cereal every time we went to someone's house because I didn't like anything, or I had the bun with ketchup at the barbecue because I didn't want to eat anything else.
Well, this has happened to my best friend, and she's the first one to admit this. But she, her son has actually grown up that way too because of her habits, right? Yeah. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So we do have to model what we want to see in our children. We actually have to live by that too. That means that we're not snacking all the time in the pantry. That means that we're sitting down with our meals without our phone and being distracted, without an iPad, without anything, right? We have to actually model that in order for our kids to do that too. And that's what is so hard for some parents, because they have to break their bad habits. One other thing I want to mention is I just want to be clear that, I am not perfect. There are those days that I don't want to cook, I don't want to make anything, and I'm tired and I've worked too hard and there's just too much going on, or we're going through the stomach bug or whatever's happening, where I want to order out, right? And if I order out, for example, if I order out pizza, and this is such a great tip because I see this happen all the time with people who are just tired and overwhelmed, and they order out pizza and they eat the pizza and that's all they eat. And that I feel like is a mistake, because it is so easy to throw in a roasted sweet potato in the oven, or that cauliflower dish I just mentioned, while you're waiting for your pizza, so that you can have your pizza, but also maybe you had a side of cauliflower and some sweet potatoes with it too, to offset the balance of what you're eating, and you're getting some more nutrition from plant foods.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would personally recommend to have some meat first. So hard boil some eggs and have some protein, and that'll really help to also stabilize the blood sugar. So yeah, really, really great tips. So I know that's all the time we have today, but thank you so much for being here, for your amazing tips. Everyone can find you at The Food Babe everywhere basically, and I have everything linked in the show notes, and we'll have the do you have a pre-sale link for your book as well? I'm sure.
You can just go to foodbabe.com and everything
Perfect.
Is there.
Okay, awesome. Well, everything will be linked, and thanks so much for taking the time to be here today. And thank you literally for all of the work that you're doing to change every single person's life in this country, and I feel like I want to help in some way. So is there any way people can help, join your mission? Is that a thing?
Well, you can come on over and join my email newsletter just to stay informed of everything that's going on. But also, I would say, when you learn something that you didn't know about food and ingredients and health, share it. Share it.
That's why I have this business.
There's so much amazingness that can happen when you share something, and when someone else sees it and they get that spark and they start to make changes for themselves. So don't be scared to share it and shout it out from the rooftops, because that's how I got started.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.